Imagine walking into your family's business, the one you poured your heart into, only to be told to sit in a storage room because you don't matter. Picture their faces when they learn you're the billionaire they're begging to save them. That was my reality. My name is Evelyn Harrow, and 12 years ago, I walked away from Sterling Enterprises, my family's crumbling empire. They called me a disappointment, dismissed my ideas, and relegated me to the shadows. But in those shadows, I built something unstoppable. This is the story of how I turned their rejection into my greatest weapon. I'm Evelyn Harrow, 38, CEO of Pinnacle Capital, with a net worth of $2.8 billion. Financial magazines label me ruthless and brilliant, a shadow tycoon who reshaped struggling industries. But to my family, I'm still the disappointment, the daughter who dared to dream beyond their expectations. Growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, I watched my father, Theodore, build Sterling Enterprises into a manufacturing giant. From age 10, I studied balance sheets while my friends watched cartoons. By my 20s, I was boosting profits by 50%, landing international clients, transforming outdated systems. Yet, when my father retired, he chose my brother Elliot as successor, declaring, "Sterling men lead." That betrayal stung deeper than I can describe. They didn't just overlook me, they erased me, demoting me to a closet office, stripping away my clients. So I left, vowing to build something they couldn't ignore. Under my mother's maiden name, Harrow, I founded Pinnacle Capital. In 12 years, it grew from a tiny office to a $2.8 billion empire, saving businesses like the one my family was about to lose. Last month, I returned, not as their forgotten daughter, but as their only hope. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should know you best? That sting of being dismissed, of having your potential ignored, it's a wound that doesn't heal easily. For me, it was my family's rejection that fueled my fire. Every time my father called me sweetheart instead of listening, every time my brothers laughed at my ideas, it pushed me harder. I didn't just want to prove them wrong, I wanted to prove I was enough. In that storage room, surrounded by dusty relics of a company I once loved, I realized something: being underestimated is a gift. It gives you the space to build, to grow, to become unstoppable without their permission. I built Pinnacle Capital in secret, not out of shame, but to show the world, and myself, what I could do when no one was watching. You don't need their validation to create your legacy. Maybe you've felt that same sting, overlooked at work, doubted by family, told your dreams are too big. I'm here to tell you, those doubts aren't your limits. They're your starting line. Use them. Let them drive you to build something so remarkable they can't look away. This is more than my story, it's a call to anyone who's been pushed aside. Drop a comment below: where are you watching from, and who's underestimated you? Hit that subscribe button if you're inspired by stories of people rising above, turning no into watch me. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't defined by others' blindness. Let's build a community of risers, of dreamers who refuse to stay in the shadows. Stick with me as I take you inside the day my family learned who I really was, and what happened next. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, where sprawling estates and quiet ambition defined our world. My father, Theodore Sterling, built Sterling Enterprises from a single factory into a manufacturing giant that powered the town's pride. Its warehouses churned out precision parts, its name synonymous with legacy. As a child, I'd wander its halls, mesmerized by the hum of machinery and the weight of my father's vision. By 10, while my friends were glued to cartoons, I was poring over balance sheets at the kitchen table, deciphering numbers like a secret code. I didn't just want to be part of Sterling Enterprises, I wanted to make it better. I'd sketch ideas for streamlining production, cutting costs, dreaming of the day I'd stand beside my father, not as his daughter, but as his equal. But our family had a hierarchy, unspoken yet rigid. Theodore's gaze always lingered on my brothers, his pride reserved for them. I was the youngest, the only girl, my passion dismissed as a phase. "You're a smart one, Evelyn," he'd say, ruffling my hair, "but business is a man's game." Those words stung, planting a seed of doubt I'd carry for years. Yet, I couldn't stay away. Sterling Enterprises was in my blood, its potential a puzzle I was determined to solve. Every late night studying, every idea I scribbled, was a quiet rebellion against the limits they set for me. I believed, naively, that hard work would earn my place. But in the Sterling family, legacy wasn't about merit, it was about tradition, and I was never part of the plan. My brothers were the chosen ones, each carved into roles that fit my father's vision of Sterling Enterprises' future. Elliot, the eldest at 45, was the golden child, Dad's mirror image in confidence, if not competence. From the moment he could speak, Theodore paraded him through the office, declaring him the heir to the Sterling throne. His ideas were often reckless, half-baked schemes that bled money, but Dad called them visionary. Dexter, 43, was the charmer, sliding into sales with an easy smile and a knack for golf course deals. He could win clients over with a handshake, but his ambition stopped there, content to coast on charisma. Casper, 40, was the quiet one, a tech genius who built systems that kept the company running. His algorithms saved millions, yet he was overlooked, lacking the aggressive swagger Dad prized. And then there was me, the outlier, the daughter who didn't fit the mold. While Elliot basked in praise, Dexter schmoozed, and Casper toiled in the background, I was the one they didn't see. I'd sit in boardrooms, unnoticed, absorbing every detail, learning the business inside out. My brothers weren't cruel, not exactly, just blind to my potential, raised in a world where a sister's voice was an afterthought. They'd joke about my spreadsheets, my late nights, as if my drive was a quirk, not a strength. But I kept pushing, believing that numbers don't lie, that results would speak louder than their assumptions. I was wrong. In the Sterling family, legacy wasn't built on what you did, it was built on who you were. And I was just the girl who loved a company that didn't love her back. By 15, I was more than a curious kid, I was a force. I'd spend hours analyzing Sterling's supply chain, spotting inefficiencies no one else noticed. One night, I presented a plan to my father, rerouting logistics to save millions annually. He smiled, called me his bright spark, and promptly ignored it. The rejection burned, but I doubled down. At 16, I crafted a detailed proposal for Sterling to expand into healthcare equipment, a growing market with untapped potential. I spent weeks on it, crunching numbers, charting projections, my teenage heart racing with the belief I could change our future. I stood before my family at the dining room table, slides in hand, voice steady despite my nerves. "This could double our revenue in 5 years, I said, pointing to my data. Elliot smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Cute, Evelyn. Stick to homework." Dexter chuckled, and Casper looked away, uncomfortable but silent. My father's response was the deepest cut. "It's a nice try, sweetheart," he said, ruffling my hair like I was still 10. "But let's leave the big ideas to the boys." That same month, Elliot pitched a sports equipment venture, vague, poorly researched, a gamble at best. It cost Sterling $3 million when it collapsed, but Theodore called it a bold lesson. My plan, grounded in data, was forgotten. The message was clear, my ambition didn't matter, not because it lacked merit, but because I wasn't a Sterling man. I could have quit then, let their dismissal define me. Instead, I buried the hurt and kept working, taking on every project, every challenge, believing that one day my results would be undeniable. I was wrong again. No matter how many efficiencies I uncovered or clients I landed, I was still the daughter, seen but not heard, valued but never chosen. That rejection didn't break me, it forged me, shaping a resolve that would carry me far beyond their expectations. In my 20s, I poured everything into Sterling Enterprises. 80-hour weeks, transforming outdated accounting systems, landing our first international clients, boosting my division's profits by 50%, the numbers spoke for me. I wasn't just keeping up, I was outshining everyone. Yet, when my father turned 55 and announced his succession plan, the room felt like it collapsed around me. Sterling Enterprises has always been led by a sterling man, he declared, eyes avoiding mine. He named Elliot as his successor, praising his vision despite his track record of losses. My contributions, hard data, measurable wins, were dismissed as secondary. You'll have an important role, Evelyn, he added, almost as an afterthought. That role? Working under Elliot, who promptly reassigned my clients to himself and Dexter, claiming they needed stronger leadership. The final blow came when he moved me from my executive office to a converted closet, explaining that client-facing staff deserved the windows. The humiliation was deliberate, a message that my place was small, contained, invisible. I resigned the next day. No shouting, no tears, just a letter left on my father's desk before dawn. As I walked out, carrying a box of my things, Clara, Elliot's assistant, stopped me. They don't deserve you, she whispered. They'll regret this. I didn't look back. That betrayal wasn't just a rejection of my work, it was a rejection of my worth. I vowed then to build something they couldn't ignore, something that would stand taller than their legacy. Using my savings and my mother's modest inheritance, I started over, taking her maiden name, Harrow, to sever ties with the sterling name. I wasn't running from my past, I was building a future where my value would speak for itself. That closet office, that succession decision, wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something far greater, a fire that would burn brighter than they ever imagined. The day I resigned from Sterling Enterprises, the air felt heavy with finality. After my father named Elliot as his successor, the betrayal cut deeper than I expected. My years of 80-hour weeks, transforming systems, landing global clients, boosting profits by 50%, none of it mattered. Elliot took my clients, claiming they needed a man's touch. Then came the ultimate humiliation. He moved me to a closet office, a cramped space with no windows, saying, client-facing staff deserved the view. It was a deliberate message, I was insignificant. I didn't scream or beg. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Instead, I wrote a resignation letter, each word measured, my resolve hardening with every stroke of the pen. Before dawn, I placed it on my father's desk, a silent declaration of my worth. As I walked out, carrying a small box of my belongings, the office was eerily quiet, the hum of machinery a distant echo. Clara Tate, Elliot's assistant, stopped me at the door. Her eyes were kind, her voice a whisper. They don't deserve you, Evelyn, she said. They'll regret this one day. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight with unspoken pain. I didn't look back. That moment wasn't just an exit, it was a vow. I would build something greater, something they couldn't dismiss. The sterling name would no longer define me. I was done being their shadow. I was ready to forge my own light, a fire they'd never see coming. With my savings and the modest inheritance from my mother, I started over. I left the sterling name behind, adopting my mother's maiden name, Harrow, not to hide, but to prove my success would be mine alone, no nepotism, no legacy to lean on. In a tiny office in Lower Manhattan, barely big enough for 3 desks, I founded Pinnacle Capital. It was just me and 2 recent graduates, hungry for a chance, believing in my vision when I sometimes doubted myself. Our mission was simple but bold: identify struggling manufacturing businesses, inject capital, and restructure them into powerhouses. I saw potential where others saw failure, just as I'd once seen it in Sterling Enterprises. Those early days were grueling. We worked late into the night, fueled by coffee and ambition, analyzing financials, pitching to skeptical investors, learning the ropes of a cutthroat industry. My years at Sterling gave me an edge. I knew manufacturing inside out, from supply chains to labor dynamics. But this was different. I wasn't just executing someone else's vision, I was building my own. Within 3 years, we'd turned around our first factory, saving 200 jobs and tripling its value. Word spread. Investors took notice. By year 5, Pinnacle managed a portfolio worth $500 million. We moved to a sleek headquarters overlooking Central Park, a far cry from that first cramped office. By year 12, Pinnacle Capital was a $2.8 billion empire, a name whispered with respect in boardrooms across the country. Forbes dubbed me the shadow tycoon, a billionaire who shunned the spotlight. Every deal we closed, every business we saved, was a brick in the foundation of my new legacy. I wasn't just proving my family wrong, I was proving to myself that I was enough. Pinnacle wasn't just a company, it was my answer to every dismissal, every closed door, every moment they told me I didn't belong. And yet, even as I stood at the helm of this empire, a part of me still carried the weight of that closet office, the sting of being unseen. Building Pinnacle Capital wasn't a straight line to success. There were moments when doubt crept in, threatening to unravel everything. In our 3rd year, a major deal, a textile plant in Ohio, fell apart at the last minute. The investor backed out, leaving us with months of work and no payoff. I sat in our tiny office, staring at a stack of unpaid bills, my confidence shaken. Had I been wrong to leave Sterling? Was I chasing a dream too big for me? I worked 100-hour weeks, barely sleeping, trying to salvage our reputation. My team saw me falter, but they didn't let me fall. Miranda Voss, my COO and closest confidant, pulled me aside one night. "You're not proving them wrong, Evelyn," she said, her voice steady. "You're proving you're enough. We believe in you. Keep going." Her words were a lifeline. We pivoted, targeting smaller deals, rebuilding trust one step at a time. I learned to negotiate harder, to anticipate risks, to lead through uncertainty. Those struggles shaped me more than the victories. They taught me resilience, the kind that doesn't come from applause but from getting up when you're down. By year 4, we closed a deal that put us on the map. A failing auto parts factory turned profitable in 18 months. The industry took notice, and Pinnacle began to soar. But those early nights, the fear of failure, stayed with me. They reminded me why I started, not for fame or revenge, but for the chance to build something real, something that mattered. Every time I doubted myself, I thought of that closet office, of Clara's whisper, of my mother's belief in me. I wasn't just fighting for Pinnacle, I was fighting for the girl who'd been told she didn't belong. And I wasn't about to let her down. I kept Pinnacle Capital a secret from my family, a deliberate choice that defined my journey. No Sterling would know of my success, not my father, not my brothers. My executive team understood, any contact with the Sterlings meant immediate termination. This wasn't about shame or fear, it was about building something undeniable, a legacy they couldn't dismiss as luck or nepotism. I wanted my achievements to stand on their own, free from the shadow of the Sterling name. From afar, I followed Sterling Enterprises through industry reports and financial filings. After a brief surge under Elliott's leadership, built on my initiatives, they began to falter. Bad investments, lost clients, outdated technology, all signs pointed to a company more focused on appearances than substance. I read every article, every balance sheet, watching their decline with a mix of vindication and quiet sorrow. Forbes called me invisible, a billionaire who avoided the spotlight, and I preferred it that way. The world didn't need to know my story, not yet. My family certainly didn't. Each milestone Pinnacle reached was a private victory, a step toward the day I'd return, not as their daughter, but as their equal. I wasn't hiding from them, I was preparing. The storage room they'd later seat me in wasn't just a metaphor for how they saw me, out of sight, out of mind. But in that secrecy, I found freedom. I built an empire without their permission, without their validation. And when the time came, I'd step out of the shadows, not to beg for their approval, but to show them what I'd become, a force they could no longer ignore. 3 weeks ago, my world shifted when I learned of my father's heart attack. Theodore Sterling, the unyielding force behind Sterling Enterprises, was frail in a hospital bed, his legacy crumbling faster than his health. The news came through a sterile email from my brother Elliot's office, not a phone call, not a personal plea, just a cold update about the man who'd once dismissed me. But it wasn't his condition that shook me, it was what followed. Sterling Enterprises, the manufacturing empire I'd once poured my soul into, was on the brink of bankruptcy. Industry reports I'd tracked for years hinted at trouble, but the reality was worse. Elliot's leadership had unraveled everything I'd built. His reckless European expansion drained 40% of the company's capital, leaving warehouses shuttered and workers unpaid. Lost clients, outdated machinery, and a bloated executive budget painted a grim picture. The company that once defined Greenwich, Connecticut, was now a cautionary tale in financial journals. My team at Pinnacle Capital had been monitoring Sterling's decline, not out of spite, but because we specialized in saving businesses like this. Ironically, Pinnacle was listed as their top investor prospect, a lifeline they didn't know was tied to me. I read the email again, my fingers tracing the words, urgent meeting. They needed a savior, someone with the capital and vision to pull them from the edge. I could have ignored it, let their empire fall as they'd let me fall years ago. But something stopped me, a flicker of loyalty, not to them, but to the company I'd loved as a child, to the workers whose livelihoods hung in the balance. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I was ready to return, not as their daughter, but as a force they'd never seen coming. That email sat in my inbox for days, a weight I couldn't shake. Part of me wanted to delete it, to let Sterling Enterprises burn and take their arrogance with it. They'd pushed me out, relegated me to a closet office, told me I didn't belong. Why should I save them now? I'd built Pinnacle Capital without their help, a $2.8 billion empire that proved my worth 1,000 times over. I didn't need their approval anymore. But late at night, staring out over Manhattan's skyline, my mother's voice echoed in my mind, family is family, Evelyn, even when they hurt you. She believed in me when no one else did, her modest inheritance the seed that grew Pinnacle. She'd have wanted me to go, not for revenge, but to show them who I'd become. I wrestled with that choice, my heart torn between justice and duty. Returning meant facing the people who'd broken me, my father's dismissive gaze, Elliot's smug grin, Dexter's careless charm. It meant risking the peace I'd fought so hard to build. But it also meant a chance to reclaim something, not their love, but my place in a story they'd tried to erase me from. I wasn't sure if they were worth saving, but I needed to know if I could face them without crumbling. I called Miranda Voss, my COO, and told her my plan. You don't owe them anything, she said, her voice steady. But if you go as Evelyn Harrow, not their daughter. Her words grounded me. I wasn't returning to beg for a seat at their table. I was returning to show them the table I'd built, one stronger than theirs. I booked a flight to Connecticut, my mother's gold ring necklace heavy against my chest. This wasn't about forgiveness, it was about facing the past to claim my future. Walking into Sterling Enterprises felt like stepping into a ghost of my past. The lobby, once gleaming with ambition, now bore the weight of neglect, faded carpets, dim lights, a receptionist who didn't know my name. I signed in as a visitor, my hands steady but my pulse racing. I wasn't Evelyn Sterling anymore, not to them. I was just a name on a list, a forgotten footnote in their story. Dexter spotted me first, his salesman's smile faltering into an awkward hug. Good to see you, Ev, he mumbled, eyes darting away, as if my presence was a reminder of something he'd rather forget. Casper was next, his quiet nod carrying a flicker of relief, like he'd been waiting for someone to break the tension. But Elliot was the same as ever. He strode past me in the boardroom, barely glancing up from his phone. We need these seats for real stakeholders, he said, his voice dripping with the same condescension I'd known all my life. There's a spot in the storage room for you. The words landed like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I followed Clara Tate, his assistant, to a cramped room filled with dusty boxes and faded company memorabilia. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd relegated me to the shadows again, as if time hadn't passed, as if I hadn't built an empire of my own. Clara's eyes met mine, a silent apology in her glance. "It's not right," she whispered before leaving me alone. I stood there, surrounded by relics of a company I'd once loved, my mother's necklace a quiet anchor against my chest. They thought they'd dismissed me, just like before. But this time, I wasn't the girl they'd pushed aside. I was Evelyn Harrow, and I was about to turn their world upside down. In that storage room, time seemed to collapse. The air was thick with dust, the shelves lined with old ledgers and framed photos of Sterling Enterprises' glory days. I ran my fingers over a faded picture of my father cutting a ribbon, his pride palpable even in sepia. Then I found it, a stack of hidden financials, tucked behind a broken trophy. My heart sank as I flipped through them. Tax liens, unpaid vendors, loans defaulted, the company's collapse was worse than my team's intel suggested. These weren't just mistakes, they were a betrayal of everything Sterling once stood for. I sat on a creaky chair, the papers trembling in my hands, my mind racing. How had they let it come to this? Through the thin wall, I heard the boardroom come to life. Elliot's voice, strained and unsteady, pitched to investors with a desperation I'd never heard before. "Sterling Enterprises is poised for a comeback," he insisted, but his words cracked, betraying his fear. Board members murmured, their skepticism palpable. I leaned closer, my ear against the wall, catching fragments of their doubts, lost contracts, angry creditors, a company bleeding out. It was worse than I'd imagined, and yet, a part of me felt vindicated. They'd dismissed me, but I'd seen this coming years ago. I pulled out my phone and texted Miranda, "Enter in 5. It's time." My fingers hovered over the send button, my mother's necklace warm against my skin. This wasn't just about saving Sterling anymore. It was about showing them the truth, about their failures, about my strength. I wasn't here to beg for their approval or to settle old scores. I was here to reclaim the legacy they'd squandered, to prove that the girl they'd sent to the storage room was the one they needed most. I hit send, my resolve hardening. The countdown had begun. The storage room door creaked as I stepped out, my heels clicking against the polished floor, each step a declaration of the moment I'd waited 12 years for. Clara Tate's voice cut through the boardroom's tension, "Pinnacle Capital's CEO is here." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating, as every eye turned to the doorway. I walked in, my mother's gold ring necklace warm against my chest, a quiet reminder of why I was here. "Sorry I'm late," I said, my voice steady, though my heart pounded. "I was reviewing financials in the storage room you assigned me." I slid my business card across the mahogany table, the words, "Evelyn Harrow, CEO, Pinnacle Capital," glinting under the fluorescent lights. The room froze. Elliot's pen slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. Dexter's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. Casper's eyes widened, a flicker of a smile breaking through his usual reserve. Board members exchanged glances, their murmurs barely audible. I stood tall, my gaze sweeping the room, locking eyes with my father, Theodore, whose face was a mask of shock and something else, recognition, perhaps, or regret. I'd spent years imagining this moment, rehearsing every word, every glance. But now, standing before them, I didn't feel the anger I'd expected. Instead, there was clarity, a certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. They'd dismissed me, relegated me to the shadows, but those shadows had forged me into something greater. I wasn't here to beg for their approval or to settle old scores. I was here to claim the truth they'd ignored for so long, that I was their equal, their savior, the one they'd never seen coming. My fingers brushed the necklace, grounding me. This wasn't just a reveal, it was a reckoning. I took a breath, ready to show them what Evelyn Harrow could do. The boardroom erupted into chaos, a storm of whispers and disbelief. Elliot was the first to break, his face red, his voice a strangled shout. "This is a joke, right? Evelyn, you're not." He stopped, staring at my business card as if it burned him. "Pinnacle Capital? You?" His words dripped with incredulity, but beneath them, I heard fear of being outdone, of losing control. Dexter leaned back, his usual charm replaced by stunned silence, his eyes darting between me and the card, as if piecing together a puzzle he'd never bothered to solve. Casper, quiet as ever, let a grin spread across his face, a rare spark of pride in his gaze. He'd always been the overlooked one, too, and in that moment, I felt a silent alliance. The board members were less restrained. Mr. Fitzgerald, a grizzled veteran of the industry, read my card aloud, Evelyn Harrow, CEO of Pinnacle Capital. His voice carried weight, confirming what they couldn't believe. Whispers turned to murmurs, then to questions. The Audrey Harrow? The Shadow Tycoon? I nodded, letting the weight of their recognition settle. Elliot's anger flared again. "You betrayed us," he spat, his chair scraping as he stood. "You hid this, plotted against us." I met his gaze, unflinching. "You pushed me out, twice," I said, my voice low but sharp. "You didn't betray me, Elliot. You underestimated me." The room stilled, my words cutting through the noise. My father sat silent, his frail hands clasped, his eyes locked on me. I saw something flicker there, shock, yes, but also a dawning realization. They'd seated me in a storage room, thinking I was nothing. Now, they faced the truth, I was their biggest hope, and they'd never seen it coming. I stepped to the head of the table, my voice calm but unyielding, each word a blade honed by years of preparation. For 30 minutes, I laid bare Sterling Enterprises' failures. I began, projecting charts from my tablet onto the screen. Your European expansion, Elliot, wasted 40% of the company's capital, $120 million gone on a venture you didn't research. His face flushed, but he said nothing. Your tech is a decade behind, losing clients to competitors who embraced automation years ago. And those executive suites? Lavish, while factories shut down and workers went unpaid. I paused, letting the numbers sink in, my gaze sweeping the board. You're weeks from bankruptcy, with tax liens and creditors circling. Sterling Enterprises isn't just failing, it's dying. Board members shifted uncomfortably, their nods confirming what they'd feared. I didn't stop. Pinnacle Capital can save you, I said, but not without change. I'm offering $60 million for 60% ownership, with me as chairperson. This isn't a takeover, it's a rescue. Elliot scoffed, but his voice trembled. You can't just waltz in and, I cut him off. I can, because I've done what you couldn't. Pinnacle has turned around businesses like yours, saving thousands of jobs. You need me, not because I'm family, but because I'm better. The room was silent, my words echoing like a verdict. I saw Dexter's shoulders slump, Casper's quiet nod, the board's reluctant agreement. I wasn't here to gloat, I was here to fix what they'd broken. Every chart, every figure, was proof of the vision they'd dismissed years ago. The storage room had been their mistake, but this boardroom was my arena. I stood firm, not as the girl they'd ignored, but as the leader they couldn't deny. Their empire was crumbling, and I was the only one who could rebuild it. As the boardroom tension peaked, my father's voice broke the silence, frail but steady, carrying the weight of a man confronting his past. I tracked your career, Evelyn, he said, his eyes meeting mine for the first time in years. Every deal, every headline, I knew it was you. His words hit me like a wave, stirring emotions I'd buried long ago. I clipped articles about the Shadow Tycoon, read about Pinnacle's rise. I was wrong to overlook you, to let tradition blind me to your brilliance. The room stilled, board members exchanging glances, Elliot's face a mask of betrayal. Theodore leaned forward, his voice stronger now. I thought sterling men had to lead, but you've outshone us all. We should listen to her, not because she's my daughter, but because she's earned it. His admission was a crack in the armor of the sterling legacy, a confession that shifted the room's gravity. I felt my throat tighten, not from anger, but from the weight of his regret. For years, I'd imagined this moment, his apology, his recognition, but it didn't erase the pain. It deepened it, reminding me of the girl who'd begged for his faith. Yet, it also freed me. His words weren't validation, they were confirmation of what I'd already proven. The board nodded, their decision clear. Elliot sank into his chair, his fight gone. Dexter looked away, Casper offered a faint smile, but it was my father's gaze that held me. You've always been the best of us, he said softly. I didn't reply, but my mother's necklace felt heavier, a reminder of the strength I'd drawn from her. This wasn't about forgiveness, not yet. It was about claiming my place, not as their savior, but as the leader they'd failed to see. The storage room was behind me, the future was mine to shape. With the board's approval, Pinnacle Capital injected $60 million into Sterling Enterprises, a lifeline that demanded sacrifice and change. My team moved swiftly, dissecting the company's rot and rebuilding its core. We sold off unprofitable divisions, shedding the weight of Elliot's failed ventures, and redirected funds to modernize factories. State-of-the-art automation replaced outdated machinery, breathing life into production lines. Workers, once facing layoffs, returned to revitalized warehouses, their gratitude a quiet fuel for my resolve. I restructured leadership, demoting Elliot to Vice President of Client Relations, a role that curbed his recklessness but preserved his pride. He resisted at first, his ego bruised, but the company's recovery softened his defiance. Dexter found his stride in sales, his charm finally harnessed to secure loyal clients. Casper, long overlooked, stepped into his brilliance, leading a tech overhaul that slashed costs and drew new contracts. His algorithms, once ignored, became the backbone of Sterling's resurgence. Under my chairmanship, the company stabilized, its debts cleared, its name no longer a cautionary tale but a symbol of renewal. Board members who doubted me now sought my counsel, their respect earned through results, not sentiment. Sterling Enterprises wasn't just saved, it was transformed, stronger than it had been in decades. Yet, for me, this wasn't about victory, it was about proving what's possible when vision meets action. The storage room where they'd seated me had shown me their failures, but this boardroom showed me their potential. I didn't rebuild Sterling for their applause. I did it because I saw what they couldn't, a legacy worth saving, not for the Sterlings, but for those who believed in it. As Sterling Enterprises healed, so did my family, though the path was uneven. Our first dinners were tense, silences filled with years of unspoken hurt. But over time, laughter crept in, softening the edges of our past. One evening, in my father's office, I found my teenage business plan, its pages yellowed but preserved. Theodore admitted he'd kept it, his voice heavy with regret. I feared you'd outshine me, Evelyn, he said, eyes glistening. Those words broke something open, not forgiveness, but understanding. Elliot began to listen, Dexter shared stories of his wins, and Casper became my quiet ally. We weren't perfect, but we were trying. My mother's gold ring necklace, a constant at my throat, reminded me of her belief, family is family, even through pain. We rebuilt trust, not by erasing the past, but by facing it. The storage room had been their mistake, but these moments were our choice, a fragile, hopeful bridge to something new. Looking back, being underestimated was my greatest weapon. The storage room wasn't a punishment, it was a vantage point, showing me what needed fixing, before I fixed it. Every dismissal, every sweetheart, every closed door fueled my fire. I didn't build Pinnacle Capital for revenge, I built it for freedom, the kind that comes from knowing your worth doesn't need their nod. Sterling's revival wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about proving I was enough. To anyone who's been overlooked, know this, your value isn't in their eyes. It's in the work you do when no one's watching, the dreams you chase when they say you can't. The storage room taught me that shadows are where you forge your strength. Step out when you're ready, not to beg, but to shine. My mother's necklace, my father's regret, my brother's respect, they're not my legacy. My legacy is the empire I built, the lives I changed, the truth I claimed. You don't need their permission to start. You just need to believe in the power of your own light. Have you ever been underestimated, told your dreams don't matter? That sting fueled my journey from a storage room to a $2.8 billion empire. Your value isn't in their doubts, it's in your resilience. Share your story in the comments, who's overlooked you, and how did you rise? Let's inspire each other to turn no into watch me. Your voice matters, and I'm listening. This is just the beginning. Next time, I'll share how I rebuilt Sterling Enterprises step by step, modernizing its factories, healing my family, and turning a failing legacy into a thriving future. You'll see the boardroom battles, the tough calls, and the moments that redefined us. If you're inspired by stories of turning setbacks into triumphs, hit that subscribe button now. Join our community of risers, dreamers who refuse to stay in the shadows. Drop a comment, where are you watching from, and what's your biggest goal? Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their potential is limitless. Let's build something unstoppable together, because no one gets to define your worth but you. My journey from the storage room to the top wasn't about revenge, it was about freedom, about proving I was enough. You can do the same. Take that first step, believe in your light, and let's show the world what we're capable of. Stick with me for more stories that spark change. Thank you for being here. Now, let's rise.